Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Coming at you in the morning hours of the 4th of February, 2023 with the pre-Fraudarchy castover. This is going to be Keyan against TheShambler on my latest map, which I made yesterday on the 3rd. It is Megalith Empire, a 1 versus 1 map that is Y-mirrored, Y-symmetric. And you might be asking why? Well, I don't know. Just wanted to try something a little different. I think it worked out in general. I think there's some interesting range of possibilities, and we'll get into the map a little bit as we talk about the openers here. So you'll note that we have the asteroid tiles. You'll also note that we have some tiles that I haven't actually made yet, so that's going to remain a bit of a blight for the time being, but we get to see this whole asteroid stuff in the mid-left area. Workers meet in the middle. You'll see this neutral bunker here. This is actually the only ground path you have, so that neutral bunker can be quite useful. It's a little bit imba, perhaps, or maybe not imba. It's just different for Terran, because the Terran can obviously go for a, what would you say, the Terran can go for something a little bit different insofar as they can repair the bunker, right? But you can't lift it off, because Veek was able to fix that, actually, so that's pretty cool. We did see the Shambler lose a worker, so he has no idea what Keyan is going for here, which will be a cenotaph. He's actually idling. I don't know if he's going to go for like a gateway behind this or whatever. He's floating a bit of money. At this point, the Shambler is familiar with what the cenotaph offers, and we are also on a version of the game where the Hydralisk costs 100 minerals instead of 75, which doesn't sound like it's a mega change. But for the learned among us, we will know that that is indeed a pretty big change. It actually means that losing that early worker and then having to send another one out to scout is a little bit more costly than it could have been. This warden is placed in such a way where it will encompass a lot of this area, which obviously this being the only path into your base, makes it a little bit difficult to account for. And I did want to talk a little bit about this burrow tactic, as the first two Hydras are on the way. The burrow tactic, to me, feels pretty lame, insofar as if you can burrow on unbuildable terrain, you have no recourse for removing it, and detection is a little bit hard to come by, right? That being said, if they burrow on a ramp, I guess, like, most of the times you can't burrow somewhere that's unbuildable, especially for Protoss, who can fit in, like, pylons and stuff in cute places. Yeah, so I don't really know what can really be done there, realistically speaking. I was actually thinking, you know how spider mines unburrow when you walk near them? If units were forced to unburrow when you walked over them, that would morph a lot of engagements, but it might be a little bit fairer, and I don't know what we could really do about that. There will be an Ovaleth drop. Ovaleths fit 3 Hydras, and so with the lower econ of the Shambler, he's still not really making any more workers. He's got one more on the way. Obviously, he can afford them less often. This Matrix won't finish in time, and the Legionnaires are going to have to come back here. He's not even going to drop on there, though. He could have denied the Matrix. There is a pretty quick response. Oh, I guess, nope, never mind. Keyan wants to sacrifice some workers instead. So he actually has an okay response with the Legionnaires, since they do surround pretty easily. And there will indeed be an evacuation. Obviously, the Matrix up now means that Ovaleth can't really do too much. It could have been a Warden, and if it was a Warden, then maybe he would have been in a little bit of a better position to actually kill the Ovaleth, or at least do more lethal damage to it. Obviously, the Warden has... I think they might have the same range. Yeah, they do. But obviously, the Warden does more individual single-targeted damage. And then the Shambler asking for the price of the Legionnaires. They are indeed 75 minerals. But, of course, you have to spend 50 gas and 100 minerals for the Cenotaph. And also, they are not very individually durable, right? Even in, like, if you have, you know, remotely equal numbers of Hydras to Legionnaires, the Hydras will win. It's just in those small little fights where you can only fit 3 in an Ovaleth or whatever, that obviously can be pretty significant. Keyan had a funny strategy in mind where he was actually going to send his worker here to claim the bunker as like a mainstay or whatever, and use that as, like, you know, you scout or whatever, and then you claim the bunker after, in case somebody's rushing to take it. I'm sure there could be some cute strategies like that, since any unit can go in a bunker now. Now the Legionnaires are going to be on the march. There's a question of whether or not they will even bother attacking the bunker, and I think this is a good choice because obviously he's isolated a couple of the Hydras out. He has lost 2 Legionnaires, but trading Legionnaire for Hydra is super favorable. And he's even going to go ahead and take a jump onto that Hydra as well. Very good stuff there. This worker was probably just misrallied. He is going to have to pop off, and that Kagrin is nowhere to be found. At this point, all burrow all the time with a Warden on the front line. I don't really think that the Shambler can can attack very aggressively, so he is going to have to defend with what he has. He's already lost about a quarter of the HP on his Hacharosk. The Iziracore should deal with these Legionnaires quite well. It won't even die at the end of it, so very good usage of his minerals there, but obviously that was 2 Hydras worth of minerals, so that means that he's got very, way less kill threat. At this point, Keyan has floated a decent amount of money. We were having a conversation about this as a thing that we all have a problem with is, we micro, we take fights or whatever, and then we haven't yet found enough time to, tab back to our base with F1 or whatever and dive on our micro or just use, if I usually bind production to, 4 or somewhere between 4 to 5 to 6, that range. And that works out pretty well. So, hey, actually, recently, in the same update that Hydras get their mineral cost increase, the other thing that I ended up doing was I increased the attack rate of Legionnaires and Zealots. Legionnaires might not have needed it as much, but I felt like it was reasonable because they do melt pretty quickly. Even Zealots do. Now, if Zealots still end up feeling like they're not very good, I feel like, we might look at increasing their durability or something. But honestly, they feel pretty solid. Just their presence alone, one Zealot with 3 Dracodons can really fuck up an early round of Hydras just because you have this issue with the Hydras themselves where it's you can just imagine. The Hydras have to start kiting backwards or they're going to take free damage from the Zealot. And if the Zealot does more attack rate now, which it has, then it deals more damage and so on. Obviously, Keyan should be aware or should remember that this worker is spying on him, but he is massing all of his units up at the front. He's adding a 3rd Cenotaph behind it, and there will be a base taken in the bottom left, so crossing the little the ramp there into the territory of the asteroid stuff, right? The megalith, as it were. So extending his empire is the Shambler. Certainly giving a shot at that. And as I take a sip of not coffee, because I wasn't at a store that had coffee because it was really cold last night, so I had to go to the corner store instead of the normal long walk that I do. Remember that there is a coffee link. That's all I can say about that. For people who don't know what the Hierophant does, so that initial blue overlay indicates a movement speed slow and moving away from a Hierophant. Red means that they actually lose attack rate. You have to stack the attack rate, or you have to stack the attack multiple times for that to happen. So it's I believe it's 5 stacks of the attack. Now, at this point, Keyan is going to shuffle his army through. If the Shambler is paying attention, he should be worried about this. But actually, I think Keyan is just going to protect his investment because he has a couple of Wardens down here finished. He's got, pretty good anti-drop, actually. And he's going for an embassy to finally grab a witness, which now costs a little bit more as well. And actually, yep, so the armies are going to meet each other. But now this is not a favorable engagement for the Shambler based on this unit count that he has. He was trying to work her up for a while. He's up to 23 workers, right? And obviously taking this expansion. When we compare this, obviously that Aboleth will spot them. I'm not sure if it was spotted in kind. So he should be prepared that this army is indeed coming down. I don't believe that he can hold this with this army, assuming Keyan, of course, masses up a little bit beforehand, right? He is just going to tear that Iziracore apart, but he has lost a good number of his Legionnaires, and so yeah, I think actually he just made a huge mistake in coming in very stupidly, for lack of a better term. He's just sort of trickling them in, maybe not expecting that there would be the response, but obviously the Aboleth spied on him, so, and the worker also spied on him, so to be fair, it was perhaps a good attempt. At this point, he's kind of scared of his own not-so-secret base in the corner being spied and sniped. But, this is something else that I was thinking about, too, is that maybe I could shift the base so that it's more to the left, more secret, where your auto path doesn't actually take you down that area. But in this case, you would just check it anyway. It wouldn't really be the end of the world. It would just mean that if you scouted lazily, then you might not see it, right? Unless you're Zerg. It's fun. I remember there was another layer to this, right? Where as undead in Warcraft 3, haunted gold mines spread blight too much to the point where they revealed it really obviously if you were trying to do a hidden base. And I just find that really funny. It's they ended up balancing it so that it wasn't as They didn't spread as much or whatever. That's goofy to me. Still no mining at this macro base here. You can see Shambler falling behind in terms of his attention economy. He is a little bit worried that maybe there was a gas base here, but he's actually boxed in at this point. He can't go any farther. So that will be the end of his reign, so to speak. Still no witness, but it is on the way. So that will clear out this scout, and a bunch of more legionnaires are being pumped, saving the gas for perhaps, I don't know, something else entirely. Lots of Hydras at home. Not really any workers still. Okay, one worker at the base, and yeah, more of it a little sortie. So Shambler tentatively ahead because of the fact that he's got the he's got the base down here, but it needs to actually start paying out some dividends, and so far he hasn't really been able to incur too much damage. There is a base in the back that you can take. I should have probably lingered a little bit more in the map design. So this base is obviously really hard to take because it like commits you down into this area, and easily harassed from the air and etc. Although at this point I think Keyan could probably take it, just because he would force Shambler to actually go for something. He's not capping any geysers, he's not even mining gas from these places, so... There you go, the witness incidentally detects that borrowed worker and clears it out, and now the Shambler is much more in the dark. This witness will confirm that there is no back base. Obviously, he was aware that there was a base over here, so he will pretty much confirm that this is only a 2-base Zerg as he takes his own back base. This back base, obviously not a whole lot of gas, but many more minerals, which could just result in an ocean of legionnaires, which is already starting to form. You can see the waves on the shore. And the excisant finally being capped now, which should be spotted by the witness if it moves a little bit further. No excisants down here yet, but maybe that'll change. He is starting to harvest the gas normally. I would expect that, what the Shambler likes to do if he hasn't been successful in his early aggro is he usually, builds up an army, keeps his money low, but at some point decides, usually when he's capped a bunch of geysers, I think, that, hey, it's time to go for a tech up, right? And he's more than content to do that. Kind of like Mystery Meat in that way. They're very content to do all sorts of stuff like that in general. Just macro up or whatever if you haven't been able to pressure them. And he does have, some units at each base. A decided attack could wipe this base out, and his army would be pretty far. He's actually he's gotten pure Hydra here, which is probably not super advisable. We do have an Astral Omen coming, and I think... What's the gas looking like? He's still not getting any gas. He's going for Skithra cores. So Skithra cores can be a little bit tricky for Protoss to deal with en masse, because if you don't have a large number of, you kind of need, I want to say 4 matrices to deal with that, and they need to be placed in a good spot where they can give coverage to each other. And the reason why you need 4 is because they need to, deal more damage than a Warden does, effectively, to quickly deal with the Skithra core army. He only has Hierophants, and he only has 3 of them. And, he does have some Wardens coming, but if that base gets hit early by any amount of the Skiths, I do think that this base just ends up getting melted. He could go for a Gladius, but he doesn't have the gas for it. He's not even harvesting from his main. A lot of lackadaisical, sort of slow approaches here. And not even harvesting gas from this base either, from the ridge. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, Shambler's hesitating, so the Wardens will finish, and that will probably dissuade him from attacking too heavily. Especially when the Hierophants show up. Yeah, they also slow you down, obviously, when you're retreating, so it's actually a really great anti-harassment tool. The witness is now going to move over here, and it looks like he's planning to scout the middle of the map. It doesn't reveal anything over here, which would just maybe be a massing up of an army. Still not harvesting gas in the main off of that capped geyser. Okay, he's starting to correct that error. He's got that resolved now. And we do see capped geysers in this area. So now Shambler is nearly up to the gas break point of dropping an Iral Iris. The witness has not revealed that yet. And I do think that there are also enough Hydras to hold this amount of Legionnaires. If he fired back with an Exemplar or something along the way, that would obviously be a pretty big help. If these Skithra cores end up getting killed by, trying to run by and kill some defenses or something, that would be a big help for... Yeah, they are just going to get pot-shotted out here, and at least 2 of them will die. Maybe 3. Yep, okay. So now there's only 2 left, so you could definitely go for Exemplars here. He's instead going to go for Gladiuses. I do think that it's really hard to hit a critical mass of Gladiuses to counter the play that's happening here. But also, there was only 1 witness, and it's off in the middle of nowhere now, confirming that there's no base in the middle, at least. So I do think Keyan is not looking to be in too hot of a position. He's dumping gas onto matrices. He's getting the more gas-intensive unit from the Astral Omen, despite being on 2 bases where only one of them even has a geyser at all. So, ambitious. Obviously, Shambler has taken this back base, but he's not really doing anything with it just yet. I'm assuming he'll start setting up some defenses. Worried about air attacks, drop attacks, etc. This is a very large base area, but obviously if you're going to drop ground units in, you have to drop them down here, or like over here and then move down or whatever. So it's kind of interesting there. I was debating whether or not this base should have like a dedicated ramp for it, but if it's just going to be gas only, then I think that's fine. It's also a little bit harder to hold, right? Now you'll notice if your enemy goes for this base in here, I mean, it might be that this base offers too much with the double gas and the ridge. Like maybe that should be resolved in some other way. But either way, I think if you were in a situation where you were trying to take like your back base for extra minerals and this base for lots of gas, I think you could do that. I also haven't seen anybody take these bases yet in the middle, the mid-right. It's actually quite hard to like hold them because there's no ramp there, right? So you can hold them with an air army, I guess, or you can like station defenses there and stuff. I guess technically I took this base against Keyan as a Terran, but I didn't even have any defenses there. I think I built some Sentinels or something. That was unfortunately Sentinel's still bugged. We will try to fix those sooner rather than later. I would like to resolve a lot of the issues with like, you know, balances that I'm just not super happy with, or actual bugs, and see what we can do about that. Because I feel like if we can do that properly, then we'll be in a pretty good spot for a variety of things, such as perhaps an actual tournament. That would be pretty cool. Especially since when the concept was brought up, Luciferius, actually, the legend himself, who is at the joke tier of $69 a month on coffee, which I really genuinely did not expect anybody to do, he has decided to, or he has said that he might be able to donate towards a prize pool or something. That would be pretty epic. Speaking of epic, we do have vision due to the Vithrilisks, which are going to be really hard to dislodge here. Obviously, the range of the Wardens is such that they can still fire back, and obviously now we can start to distribute some of the Gladius attacks, but there is a big Legionnaire assault. I hope this isn't one of those games that just ends immediately after a single fight, but we're about to find out together, boys. Gladiuses are now on, ignoring the Vithrilisk for now. It is actually dying to a Warden anyway. And yeah, look at that. It wasn't nearly enough back to Lisks. I thought Shambler's army was bigger. He does still have a bunch of Hydras in the base, but yeah, that was actually a decisive victory for Keyan. I think a lot of it can be like just the fact that these two Wardens occupied so much time for so long. The Vithrilisks obviously weren't really microed. They were just sitting in the static defense and dying. Meant that, you know, that's a decent unit to deal with the Gladiuses, actually. Now, I'm not even sure if the Vassals were there. I'm sure they died in Splash and probably contributed quite heavily. You can't really control the Splash as much, or not the Splash, the bounces. So now it looks like we might actually see a big swing here. Really depends on how much damage Keyan can get done. Only one Gladius left alive, and it will indeed fall. So now it'll be up to the Hierophants to clean the air, and they will indeed. We do have some Izira cores that just morphed into Tetzora cores, but you'll find that they, even though they do the cleave splash damage, I do think they will eventually fall. Really good durability out of these things, and actually the circuits, you know, they're alive as well, and so those Tetzora cores will indeed prove to be worthwhile. A worthwhile investment there, and spawning just in the nick of time. This is the Zerg Chad. You heard about Cyprians being the Terran Chad. I don't know what would be the Protoss Chad. I guess historically it would be the Dracodon, but maybe there's a new one now. Atreus, I guess, probably. Yeah, Tetzoracor is kind of like the Zerg Chad. Just the way that he walks, dude. He walks like a Chad. Quasark pool going down. Looks like we need some more variety from the Shambler's army. He is still getting good gas. He didn't take any eco damage, no drops or anything. Obviously, now Keyan can start to occupy this base over here. In all the excitement, he didn't even cap these geysers, which he wants to do before he harvests them, obviously. So, kind of rough there. He will send a fleet of vassals out. There are 2 Spraith colonies here. This number of vassals might be able to pop one of them, but he's just going to go for workers anyway. Shambler isn't perfect eco-wise. Like he does have an issue, especially when he's moving away from the Spraith colonies as an evacuation move, which is I'm a little skeptical of. Oh, he almost popped the Hydra too. There you go. One of them pops. He uses the movement speed to continue skirting around. The swarms of vassals can actually be quite useful, and I think he'll even get that last worker. Indeed, he will. All in all, pretty good actually. You know, obviously he's got 2K minerals. So he definitely could take the dub, in my opinion, just by spamming out a bunch more vassals. He's going to go for a Grand Library, probably for Atreus behind this, and he will start to saturate his gases over there, and I assume he'll try to take another base somewhere. Still no base down here for Shambler. He obviously has the double gas and a ridge in this corner base, so technically he's still ahead in terms of gas, but his army is a little bit less flexible. We'll see if that changes now that he's getting the Leveril Pond. He's a Quasarc Bull already finishing. And he's now upgrading it so that he can afford some more units. I don't see a Kafralosk. I don't see a lot of hatches. I actually think his mineral account is pretty low. So we'll have to see what he goes for next. Obviously, if you do go for a Kafralosk, which is 300 gas, you can start mutating the tier 2 strains or like the secondary strains like the Bactylisk from the Hydra. You mutate it directly from the larva. So you actually skip a fair bit of the cost. So that is something that people will often end up looking for. I think it's 200 minerals and 25 gas for the Tedzora core. Whereas obviously, if you skip the Izira core, which is its own 200 minerals, then you're almost cutting. I mean, you're cutting the mineral cost in half, right? So that's pretty big. Big vassal fleet, 2 grand libraries, presumably for, like I said, for Atreus. 600 gas in the bank for Keyan. Nothing really being produced. I'm trying to strain my eyes to see if I can see any units being built. He is going to take the forward base. I thought maybe Shambler was doing the same thing, but actually he's just moving it. No, he's going to try to. That's what this worker is going to be good for. The bunker, not really seeing too much play just yet. Now Avaleth is just going to walk in and die. And maybe this will be a good fight for Shambler, because now his Bactylisks are in such a spot where they can't be closed in on by a million Legionnaires. Funnily enough, would have been a pretty good fight if he had dumped all of the money he spent on vassals into Legionnaires, probably. So obviously the armor count of the Bactylisks proving to be pretty good versus the vassal. I mean, the armor count of the Bactylisks, yeah, good against vassals, obviously, right? So we are going to see some various bursts, but there's no armor pen on the Gladius anyway, so it's not going to be doing too much. Assuming he can actually split it. Oh my god! Okay, he figured it out. You have to split that similar to like Irradiate Muta or something, but it can be pretty entertaining to to watch that happen. I think you can also burrow to escape it. I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure. I don't think it can. Well, it can attack cloaked units. It can bounce between cloaked units, so maybe that's not true. I think it would probably be safe to patch that out. Hey, I just noticed he's only harvesting from the ridge with 1 worker. That's a bit weird. Oh, okay. He's going for Heralds. This is going to buff up his Legionnaires quite a bit, I think. I was expecting Atreus just for the splash. More Gladiuses would be good as well. He's actually going for Exemplars, which is also a great shot in this particular case. Yeah, the Legionnaires become a lot harder to bust down. Calculisks are in. The Exemplar just flies over because it was tasked onto the Calculisk instead of an attack move or whatever, which is a bit awkward in terms of the unit control. And again, I think Keyan not building units is probably the biggest thing here that he got owned by. And if that Warden had targeted like this Calculisk, it probably would have killed both of them. And now it's just a matter of whether or not the production can get unpowered. He has Cantavises coming, so he can storm his way to victory. Another Gladius, but it's far from being completed. And there's a lot of Protoss structures here. I don't know if the Shambler can actually grind through them all with Bactylisks, which also have no armor pen, mind you. So he does have a decent number of them, but I do think he might be in a good spot. There's a question of whether or not he will die to the storms. Is he watching his units? Doesn't look like it. He just lets them walk in. So that softened up quite a bit of them. And so now there's a Gladius out. He can just start proccing the hit, and then he should pull back instead of allowing this Gladius to die, because obviously... Oh, did he lose both Cantavises off of the bounces? I think he probably didn't control his army very well. He's got Atreus just now starting. This unpowered lattice not really doing too wonderful for him. And yeah, there you go. That will probably be game. Purely because he had so much money, but he didn't really spend it, right? He's starting some Stargates in the back. I don't know what he's expecting. Maybe Land Effects would help disable the Bactylisks and let the rest of his army close in. Some of the residual static defense here, slowly picking off some poorly controlled units from the Shambler. But even so, his main now completely expunged of workers, and the bounces are going to be just too hot to handle, I think. Atreus are out, indeed. Yeah, I mean, they have pretty good armor, obviously, but I just think they can't handle the sustained attack. And obviously, when you're falling back because of the projectile speed of the Bactylisk, it is a little bit of a weird spot, because the they actually bounce more if you travel more range, right? So he's just getting shredded off of his own units, which is pretty unfortunate. He does have a bunch of wardens going down. He can still technically take the dub, but he definitely needs an army. And I think he needs a front line for his Atreus's as well. We have more Hydras, a couple more Bactylisks, slowly shuffling forward, shambling forward, in fact. And more Bactylisks even being morphed. This could be a mistake that could be exploited, depending on what happens. That's really unlucky that that pylon blows up just a second before the Atreus finishes. And you can actually see the progress bar of your opponent's structures if you have a detection in the area. Of course, Shambler does not. But a fun piece of trivia. In fact, where is that witness? The witness is just here. So I feel like the witness really could have done more information gathering in this game. There will be Panoptises instead of a land effect. I would have expected land effects, but at this point I think the army is just too powerful. He could obviously send the Panoptises out. There is a Vithrilisk, funnily enough, patrolling that base. There's 3 Spraiths. I think you could probably take this base in particular if you went directly for the main. I don't think it can really help with the hold. The Atreus's will not so slowly be whittled down, and a lot of wardens here, so this will be a dub for the Shambler despite the Hydra nerf. Keyan's macro letting him down, and not really able to spend all of his money. But you know what? He tried. We can say that much. Oof! Bactylists always feel like they have more range than they really do. They only have 8 range, which is like 1 more than a Warden or a Goliath or whatever. But the reason why they feel that way is because their projectile, obviously, first of all, their projectiles bounce. Second of all, their projectiles take so long to move that by the time you actually, like, step forward or whatever, it often feels like you're just getting completely owned, right? And actually, those Panoptises did better than I thought to some of those Wardens. I mean, some of those Bactylisks. And I do feel like, you know, if he had maybe gotten them a little bit earlier, or maybe he had Exemplars of a higher quantity or something, they would have done really well. Anything with high armor values will do pretty well against Bactyls. It's just a matter of, like, if they have so many and they all can attack, like, you need... If you can't outrange them, then you have to, like, overpower and overwhelm them. And Storms was a good idea. I still think Land Effects would have been a good idea. Unfortunately, all those good ideas were not... he might have had a bunch of good ideas, but he didn't have enough of the things that those good ideas told him to make, right? He didn't have enough Cantabuses. He didn't have enough Land Effects or any. In fact, he didn't have enough Panoptises or Exemplars until it was too late. The Gladius move, I'm still not sure about it. Like, it looked pretty good, actually, considering the fact that, like... I mean, Bactylis, I mean, you have to hit the Bactylis like 20 times or something. I mean, it would be 6 times from one Gladius. 6 Gladiuses would one-shot a Bactylis. I'm pretty sure my math is correct there. And so anyway, like, it's kind of funny to think about that, but I don't know if that was the good move. It was very gas intensive to do that, whereas Exemplars are a little bit more mineral intensive, and obviously Keyan had loads of minerals. I feel like if he just kept pumping Legionnaires, he would have at the very least like held that attack at bay a lot longer, and maybe that would have given him some more time to switch into, you know, more air or whatever and start picking off those satellite bases. But anyway, lovely to see a game on the new map. Post your thoughts. And obviously check out the Discord server, which will be in a comment below as well as in the description, because you too can get shown up on this very channel and have me drink an energy drink while talking sort of about your game. So that's a deal that you can't miss, and you also can't miss this score screen. Peace.